Howdy folks, thanks for tuning in. We've got kind of an interesting project that I'm gonna work on here in this video. So this right here is actually my personal daily driver. It's a 2015 Tesla Model S 70D. This car actually has over 460,000 miles on it. What I'm gonna be doing to it today isn't so much a repair, but rather a retrofit or an upgrade. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna install this module right here that has this little wiring harness attached, and this is a controller that allows the car to communicate via PLC, the communication method that CCS uses. And while it's probably not something that I'm going to use a whole lot with this car because it does have free unlimited supercharging, I thought it'd be a really interesting thing to do a video on. And potentially other folks might be interested in doing this upgrade for cars that don't have the unlimited supercharging transferable anymore. Maybe it got transferred on a new car purchased, or it was traded into Tesla or whatever. So anybody that has a legacy Model S or any other older, quote unquote older Tesla that doesn't have CCS capability, this video should be kind of some useful information for you. But first, before we really get into that, let's talk about why you would want to do this upgrade. So, why would you want to do a CCS upgrade on your legacy Model S or X or an older version of the Model 3? And there's a few different reasons. Obviously, if you have a car like this one where it has the free unlimited supercharging, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of benefit to you. But if you have a car that had the supercharging disabled for any number of reasons, it was traded into Tesla, or somebody forfeited the free supercharging in order to get it on a new car, which is something that Tesla has been doing for the last year and a half, there's a handful of other cases where you might want to do it. Maybe you don't have any superchargers in your vicinity, but you rely on fast charging quite a bit. And then the other question that people might think of is, why would you want to do a CCS upgrade when NACS has effectively become the national standard for charging? Or at least it's starting to come into play now. Almost all the automakers in the US have signed on with Tesla to adopt the NACS standard, and pretty much all of the DC fast charging networks have committed to installing NACS at their stations, and in the future the CCS plugs will probably be replaced with NACS handles. But there's a problem with that. NACS is not the same as the legacy supercharging that cars like this, or really for that matter pretty much any Tesla, uses. The original supercharging standard used a communication method called CAN, which is short for Controller Area Network, while CCS uses a communication method called PLC, or Power Line Communication. And the NACS standard uses the same communication method as CCS. It's all the same protocol. The only thing that's different is the physical plug, the actual interface. So any future third-party NACS sites are going to use that CCS communication method. So on a car that's not capable of communicating via that method, they won't be able to use them. So even though the plug is correct, the communication method is not the same. They don't speak the same language. So if you own an older Tesla model that does not have the CCS capability, you also won't be able to use third-party NACS stations. For all intents and purposes, as far as we know, Tesla will continue to support them on the supercharger network indefinitely, using the CAN communication. And the superchargers, depending on the generation, but particular anything V3 and newer, support CCS communication. So they can do either or. They can do the legacy CAN communication or the newer PLC CCS communication. So that's what enables all of the other automakers to be able to use the superchargers, is that they're bilingual. They can communicate in either method. But there's no indication that Tesla is going to share the communication method, via the CAN-based communication for the older models to the other third-party charging networks. Nor do I think they would really be interested in supporting the CAN-based communication, because it would be a lot of hardware and retrofits that would have to occur to take place in order to make those capable of communicating via the CAN methods. So anyways, to boil it all down to one simple thing, if you have a Tesla and you won't be able to use third-party CCS or future third-party NACS charging sites, you have to have CCS communication enabled, which is what this is going to do. And there's a couple of interesting caveats to doing this, particularly on the pre-refresh Model S. By refresh, I'm talking about the mid-2016 refresh, where they got rid of the nose cone and updated the headlights and the rear bumper and all that stuff. Those cars use a Gen 3 onboard charger, while the cars built anywhere basically from the very end of 2013. There's been mixed reports on when they started implementing the Gen 2 onboard charger on the Model S, but sometime in very late 2013. For all intents and purposes, we'll just call it 2014 through to the end of the nose cone body style, use a Gen 2 onboard charger, which has a different plug interface and stuff for the communication. Tesla makes the parts available for those refresh cars with the Gen 3 onboard charger. The parts to do the CCS retrofit are available on the parts catalog, and it comes with the adapter and all that stuff. But for the Gen 2 onboard charger cars like this, they don't make the parts available in EPC. Supposedly, or at least for some period of time, Tesla did support doing CCS retrofits on these cars. I'm not 100% certain if that's still the case, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do it myself. So this kit that I got, which has both the control module and the wiring harness, actually came from Europe. I found it on eBay. And usually when you buy them, you have to buy them with the Combo 2 adapter, the European CCS, which obviously is no use here. But I happened to find this one that did not have that, and it was a bit cheaper than those all-inclusive kits that come with the adapter. But this is set up for the Gen 2 onboard charger. So it uses these two 16-position Molex MX150Ls. That's just the style of connector that they are. The newer ones use I believe it's a 20-position MX150. So it's just a different connector. The module itself is the same, so that part's interchangeable, but the wiring harness is different. So I might actually see if I can kind of build a wiring diagram for this harness to maybe build harnesses to make it work on the older cars, because it seems that's a market that nobody's tapped into yet. But anyways, enough talking. Let's actually get to the install, which is going to go pretty quick. This is a pretty simple thing to get installed in the car. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and roll down all of the windows. And then I'm actually going to open all of the doors, because we're going to disconnect the low voltage system and we want to be able to access everything. Really, we only care about the back seat area in particular. All right, and now the next step is we're going to disconnect the high voltage system on the car. Excuse the mess. I'm going to pull out the frunk tub as well as the plastics on the edges here to get to the 12-volt battery and the disconnect loop. Alrighty, we got everything disconnected, both the 12-volt battery over here and then our kind of first responder maintenance loop that lives under the cabin air cleaner there. Now let's move on to the back seat. Alrighty, so the onboard charger lives under the back seat here. So we're gonna have to pull up the bottom cushion off the bottom, which is pretty simple. It basically just pops loose via kind of two clips, one on either side. Real similar to lots of other cars. You just give it a solid tug and it pops loose. And then we can just pull the cushion out of the way. Depending on the build of your car, you might have some harnesses present, but this one doesn't have anything. We'll just get this out of the way. All right, so now that we have the seat cushion off, the next step is pretty simple. You just crawl in here real quick. So we've got kind of this, I don't know, sort of sound deadening insulation blanket. So we'll just kind of peel that back out of the way. And here we've got our onboard charger. And then over here is actually the high voltage junction box. And on a car with dual chargers, it would have a second charger right here. But now what we need to do is we've got to install this thing. So it's actually has sort of a little extra plastic bracket attached to the bottom of it. And it's actually just going to attach right here to the same mounting holes where the high voltage junction box goes. So we'll just take those screws out real quick. We'll go ahead and actually probably want a little bit longer bolts. Let me go grab some longer screws for that real quick. All right, I got some longer screws here. So we'll go ahead and get these in. Alrighty, so it appears that the clips and everything on our harness were designed to go into presumably a rear-wheel drive car or a slightly different year version, or, you know, whatever it is, slightly different version of car that does not have this big, this is a kind of a big fuse block for the front drive unit. And it looks like this harness was designed to go in for a car that did not have this equipped, because the clips are all supposed to go onto the seat brackets here. But our holes are taken up with the bracketry for this thing. So I'm actually going to have to change around the locations of some of the clips. I've actually unplugged the harness from the box here because the larger connectors on this end are just too big to be able to easily fish through on that side. So I'm going to fish the harness through in reverse. And then I'm probably going to have to cut the zip ties on these clips and move them around in order to get them in the correct locations to actually fit the bracketry on this thing and do just a slightly different routing. All right, we'll go ahead and plug this back into our box. And this clip I can get into the seat bracket. It's probably the only one that I can really do that with. And then this one, I think I can get in this hole, but the hole is smaller, so I don't know if it'll fit properly. It kind of fits, except it sort of tore off all the little doohickeys there. I might do a little bit different method on that. I'm going to cut that off and eliminate the clip since it doesn't fit. And then I've got a handy little trick here. Now I could just zip tie this directly to the bracket, but I don't want the wire sitting on that sharp edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a zip tie through. And then in between the wiring and the bracket, I'm going to put another zip tie around that one. And that kind of acts almost like a standoff, just like that, just like these clips do, to keep the wire off of the bracket so that it doesn't get chafed. Oh yeah, perfect. Got our handy dandy little zip tie tool here. Nice and secure. Go ahead and cut this one off. And I'll do the same thing on this side. There we go. It's not rubbing on anything. And then we'll put our last one. We'll actually use the proper clip and attach it right down there. So we'll go ahead and zip tie our clip back to the wiring. All right, and now the next step is we've got a data connector for the onboard charger down here. We've got to unplug that. There we go. And then this harness is kind of like a jumper. So one end plugs into the original harness on the car, where it plugged into the charger. And then the other end of the harness plugs into the charger itself. There we go, and that's all done. We'll go ahead and tuck our blanket back into place here. Right where it's supposed to go. And then before I put the seat back on, we'll go ahead and get everything reconnected and make sure everything's working the way that it's supposed to. And we'll go ahead and do the firmware deployment for the CCS. Alrighty, I've gone ahead and connected the 12-volt battery and all. We'll go ahead and wait for the car to boot up here for a minute. Alright, it's booting up. We're still waiting for our MCU to update, but here on the instrument cluster we actually have an alert that says CCS fast charging is unavailable, configuration change required. So that's what we're going to do. Now this can be done via Toolbox, but in an update, I don't know, maybe about 2 years ago or something, they made a command here in the service menu to do a CCS retrofit. So I want to see if that actually works, because I've never actually done it that way before. So we should be able to go to, I believe it's high voltage charging, and then there we go. So we have a button here that says CCS Retrofit. We'll go ahead and hit that. Only run this routine when performing CCS Retrofit and when the CCS communication hardware is physically installed. Incorrect configuration may cause the inability to charge. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run that. Oh, right. So we have to put the car into gateway unlock. So we'll go ahead and do that. And in order to do the gateway unlock, just like it said on the screen there, you hold the right turn signal with your foot on the brake, it unlocks the gateway, and now we can do that procedure. And look at that. So now we have the retrofit done. I think it's going to reboot itself here real quick. And by the way, while that's doing its thing, our little module there actually has an LED in it that's blinking. There we go. Now the car's waking up again. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and do the software reinstall here, which should allow it to get all the correct firmware. We'll hit reinstall. All right, and we're back. Took about 15 minutes for the car to do the firmware redeploy. Let's go ahead and turn it back on. Make sure we don't have any major alerts. Looks like there's no active alerts. If we go to software and additional vehicle information, there we go. So we've got CCS and third-party NACS DC charging is enabled. And then if you click info, it just brings you to the owner's manual. But yeah, that pretty much does it. That's interesting. If we go to high voltage, it no longer has a charging tab since we've done the update. Cool. All right, we'll go ahead and get everything put back together, and then we can go and test this thing and make sure it actually works. Alrighty, we're here at Electrify America, and I've got my CCS adapter here, so let's go ahead and see if this thing actually works. So I'll grab our cable out here, plug it into the adapter. You gotta get the car to unlock. Okay, we're plugged in. There we go, authorizing. I can hear it making noises, and it appears to be charging. The screen on the charger hasn't actually updated. Oh, there it goes. Now it updated, sort of. If we open up the car here though, you can see that it shows that we are charging. Currently only at 30 kilowatts. Alrighty, that's going to do it for this video, folks. We did a successful installation of the CCS communication hardware for the Legacy Model S, and that's something that just adds more charging capability for these cars. Maybe not particularly useful for me, but something that would be useful for somebody that maybe doesn't have very many supercharging options in their area, or doesn't have the free unlimited supercharging anymore, that wants to take advantage of more third-party charging options. So anyways, that's it, and thanks for watching.